Oh yeah, it's the answers round. Yes, let's go and see how well you did with 1970, that wonderful year for music. And also, let's introduce ourselves to some of the great albums of that year at the same time and some of the bizarre events. Okay, number one, the biggest selling single of the year in UK. Despite my performance, it wasn't Wandering Star by Lee Marvin. It was In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry, that classic song of the summertime, despite its lyrics inviting you to have a drink, have a drive. I believe some people even block that out these days. No drums, no drums in that at all. And if you've ever noticed, the only kind of percussion in it is basically performed by Ray Dorset himself. So there we go. The biggest selling album of the year, though, was Bridge Over Troubled Water. Led Zeppelin 2 was, I think it might have been the second biggest selling album of the year, despite the fact it wasn't released in '69. Bridge Over Troubled Water, though, went on to be the biggest selling album of the entire decade, which you'll know if you did my 70s quiz. And if you go back and do it now, there you go, you've got one answer right. Okay, the Wild Man of Rock who ran over his chauffeur was Keith Moon. Now, this is a story and a half if you don't know it. Basically, he was attending the opening of the Red Lion pub in Hatfield. A friend of his, I think, had taken over the pub. And some of the local, I won't call them oiks, but he would have done, I suppose, took a dislike to his kind of ways, to his flashy Bentley and his choice of expensive brandy over beer. And when he tried to leave, which he did, sensing apparently that things were going a bit wrong, they then surrounded his Bentley and rocked the car back and forth. The driver then got out and confronted them. And he said that they were skinheads. I don't think skinheads were around at this point, but anyway, the driver got out and confronted them. And Moon drove off to try and save the rest of his friends in the car. Unfortunately, apparently not realising that his driver wasn't there, even though he must have got into the car. He was drunk as well, and he didn't even drive when he was sober, apparently. And he drove off and was unaware that he not only ran over his chauffeur, but dragged him down the road. What an awful story. Dreadful. But just, who else but Keith Moon? Who else? 10 days later, it was the Supremes that performed their farewell concert at the Frontier Hotel, Las Vegas. Of course, Diana Ross going on to her solo career. That's why it was a farewell concert, pushed by Berry Gordy in a storyline that very much reflects that of Dreamgirls, doesn't it? Which is a version of it. Yeah. Now, the lyrics. Of course, when you smile, the world is bright. You touch my hand, I'm a king. Is The Wonder of You. Elvis Presley, as I said, first dance at my wedding. Now, Elvis this year, of course, released his live album, That's the Way It Is, which goes with the film, if you've seen it. Film's terrific as well. And of course, so is the album. Great live album. Elvis before everything really started to go bloated. Why did you deceive me so? What devil inside you made me go when I needed you most of all was from Daughter of Darkness by Tom Jones, from his actually quite good album of the year, I Who Have Nothing, with some terrific. There's a great version of Try a Little Tenderness on there. Well, worth listening to. I mean, I'm a bit biased because I love Tom Jones here. I love his voice. Not the most enlightened person to listen to, though, is it? Daughter of Darkness is the picture of women isn't always great. Do you know she's a lady as well? She's got style, she's got grace, she really knows her place. There's in there as well about she always knows what to say, or when to say it as well. She can take what I dish out, and that's not easy. Oh dear. Yeah. Let's move on from that quickly. On the day you were born, the angels got together and decided to create a dream come true. So they sprinkle moon dust in your hair of gold and starlight in your eyes of blue. Yes, it's They Long to Be Close to You, isn't it? The Carpenters version of the Burt Bacharach song. Absolutely beautiful. Do you remember the advert not long ago? Well, I suppose it probably was long ago now, where it was Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee came on and sang it. And then Jimmy Hill turned up playing the trumpet afterwards. It was meant to be about awful things. Anyway, of course, wear a tall hat like a druid in the old days. Wear a tall hat and a tattooed gown. Of course, is right. Ride a white swan. The usual Bolan nonsensical mystical lyrics. But this was from the first album, T-Rex, which kind of was their way into the big time, wasn't it? And Ride a White Swan was as well, in particular. It's the song that basically supposedly, or has been quoted as founding glam rock. But actually, when Bolan sang this song, he didn't wear glam rock outfits. He only started that with the next single, Hot Love. So there you go. Interesting, maybe not. Who Now Do You Think You Are, a Superstar? Right, well, of course, it's Instant Karma by John Lennon. It wasn't from an album, of course. Instant Karma only came out as a single, and famously was written and recorded in an entire day, and quite deliberately. Some kind of philosophy. That's the whole kind of instant karma thing, a technique that was used many times afterwards, imitated many times afterwards. It even got into the shops 10 days after that recording. But of course, he did release a solo album this year, the Plastic Ono Band, for my money, his best ever solo album at the first attempt. Okay, naming that album, what have we got here? We've got Moondance. Look, Moon, and that's a dance from Strictly. Come on, I was going to make it easy for you. I wasn't going to just have someone obviously dancing, was I? Moondance, Van Morrison's best album. Am I allowed to say that? People get upset. They love Astral Weeks, don't they? I'm not a big fan. Love Moondance, though. What a great song. Never mind. Into the Mystic. That's a cracking song, isn't it? Look, it's kids having fun, and it's a house record. Jack Your Body. I can't think of a more obviously house record than Jack Your Body. It's Funhouse, the Stooges. Yeah. And of course, look, we've got the Sweet. We've got Baby Spice, and we've got Sid James. Sweet Baby James. James Taylor. Okay. Star. A star above the manger. And we've got Popeye the Sailor Man, Star Sailor, Tim Buckley's extraordinarily weird album, which I have to say I'm warming to hugely. The more I listen to it, it's 14. I nearly did this in the 1970s one, but I kind of backed off thinking it was too corny, but I gave in this time. That's the Gold Rush. That's Gold Rush. You know, Chaplin's film where he eats a boot because he's so hungry. You see him eating the boot, and then you're here. You're after the Gold Rush. Oh, please keep listening. Please keep going. Honestly, they get better. The festival. Okay, I'm sure even if you didn't know this, many of you worked this one out. First time, 1970, Saturday 19th of September. It was the very first Glastonbury Festival, of course. Although at that point, it was known as the Pilton Festival, because actually it's not held in Glastonbury, it's held in Pilton, which is nearby where the farm is. It was a £1 a ticket, apparently, and our friend was inspired to do it for the first time by seeing an open-air Led Zepp performance at the Bath Festival of Blues and Progressive Music. Got back, thought, I can do this, I can put this on myself. Michael Levis, that's where it all began. And of course, the biggest rock festival ever held was the Isle of Wight concert. This was the third Isle of Wight concert, and by far the biggest. The locals went mad, attempted to stop it. Apparently, well, you know what the Isle of Wight's like. Sorry, I'm not insulting anyone in the Isle of Wight, but I mean, it always has had a reputation for being kind of like a holiday place for the well-heeled. It's less so now, of course, but very much then. And, you know, having then 600,000 long-haired hippies turn up wanting to see this kind of music and do whatever was not looked on well. And in fact, they changed the there's a ruling locally afterwards that the council passed to make sure it can never happen again, that there was no gathering above 5,000 allowed on the Isle of Wight after that. So there we are. So it brought an end to the festival with that very famous performance. I gather an awful lot of the performances did not go very well. Joni Mitchell was interrupted on stage by someone making a political statement, and then ended up being booed for a little while because of it. The Doors, I gather, played in darkness because they wouldn't have any spotlight put on them. It's getting very near the end for the Doors as well, wasn't it, at this point? And Jimi Hendrix, I mean, he only had a fortnight to live, really, after this, and all his appearances were not going well at this point in time. So legendary, but maybe not the best place to have been. Now, what about the Hollywood Festival? Unbelievably, it was held in Newcastle under Lyme. Yes, I have been to Newcastle under Lyme. I had a friend who lived there. Yes, and not the place I would imagine Grateful Dead, Black Sabbath, Free, and Mungo Jerry playing in, and then daring to call it the Hollywood Festival. But there you go. Expo 70, it was Karlheinz Stockhausen. Now, if you don't know Karlheinz Stockhausen, I'm not going to say go and find out more about it, really, about him, because I think he's one of those people who's better off known than listened to. That's my opinion. He was on the Sgt. Pepper cover. Paul McCartney was very big fan of his, was very inspired by his, and quite a few of the songs on Sgt. Pepper, particularly "Fixing a Hole," show kind of that kind of influence of some Stockhausen music in there. He did an awful lot of electronic music, but perhaps the most, but he did a lot of mad stuff as well. And perhaps the most mad one he's known for is the Helicopter String Quartet, which, if you didn't know, involved 4 helicopters taking off with a member of the string quartet in each one separately, and a sound recordist and conductor as well, and trying to play simultaneously. There's nothing more to be said about that, is there really? But never mind. Okay, the picture round. Who have we got here? Well, we have Syd Barrett, first of all. His wonderful solo album, The Madcap Laughs, came out this year, but really it was pretty close to the end for Syd, wasn't it? 1970. Live for many more years after that, but never really managed to pull it together. Nice to see him smile, though, there. Number 20, of course, is John Entwistle. From The Who, the bassist from The Who. The Who's Live at Leeds, one of the legendary live albums, was released this year. 21, in a slightly bizarre way, is Grace Slick. You know Grace Slick? No, Jefferson Starship, Jefferson Airplane, Starship as well. The woman who started off singing White Rabbit in that bizarre way and ended up singing Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now. That's Grace Slick. Well, she may not have released, they may not have released an album in 1970, but she did, she was invited by President Nixon's daughter, Abigail, I think her name was, but I may have got that wrong. She was invited to a tea party at the White House. Grace obviously took this very seriously and invited along Abbie Hoffman, the famous Abbie Hoffman, the anarchist, to join her. And their plan was to spike President Nixon's tea with LSD, with a huge quantity as well. I mean, a really big quantity of LSD. But on arrival, Grace Slick was recognised and apparently was on a kind of a list, a no-go list, and so it never happened. Oh, there we are. Number 22 is, of course, Dana. I've met Dana, actually. Dana, 19-year-old Dana, as she was in 1970, winning the Eurovision Song Contest for Ireland, even though she was born in Britain and grew up in Britain for a long time there, with that song All Kinds of Everything. And the album All Kinds of Everything, if you like a bit of Dana, is also on the menu for 1970. 1923, I'm sure you recognise Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell's Ladies of the Canyon came out that year. Of course, she performed as well, as I just mentioned, at the Isle of Wight Festival. 24, Wilson Pickett. Couple of albums out this year. The best of them really is In Philadelphia, which sounds like a live album, but it isn't. It's just he went to Philadelphia to record. And it's uneven, I'd say, at times, but there's some really great stuff on there. It's worth a listen, most definitely. 25 is Badfinger. You know Badfinger? Their album No Dice, but they're also on the album for the film The Magic Christian, which has disappeared a bit from history, isn't it? But it was a big thing at the time. Peter Sellers starring, and Ringo Starr was in it, playing. I can't remember what the character he was playing was, but it was meant to be a comedy, meant to be a satirical comedy. It doesn't really go anywhere, unfortunately. After that, okay, there's our picture round. How you doing so far? Halfway there. Well, hopefully you did a bit better with this one. That, of course, is Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, the only release from Derek and the Dominoes, one of Eric Clapton's many bands at the time. Okay, Layla, of course, famously a song written to another man's wife, pleading with her to leave him, his best friend's wife, of course, pleading her to leave his best friend, George Harrison, and join him. Yeah, Eric Clapton doesn't come across well in a lot of stories, does he? Never mind. Of course, it was Pattie Boyd. Pattie Boyd, who also had just had the previous year the song Something written about her. As well, one of the other great love songs of all time, and many years later had Wonderful Tonight written about her before her marriage to Eric Clapton collapsed, because he got her, of course. There we are. And George Clapton still staying friends with him. I don't know how that works. This, of course, is Tea for the Tillerman. Sorry, I keep saying of course. I know it's not of course, but it's, there we are. Cat Stevens' album, often thought of as Cat Stevens' best album. I love it. I absolutely love it. I like Cat Stevens anyway. I'm not sure it's the greatest of all of them, but there you go. Tea for the Tillerman itself, of course, is the song that was used by Ricky Gervais as the theme for his TV show Extras. 28. This is Climbing by Mountain. Yeah, Climbing by Mountain. They must have loved the idea they could put those two things together. Good album too. 29 is not a good album. I don't care what anyone else says. It's unlistenable, really. It's awful. This is clearly Bob Dylan's worst. Self-Portrait. Some just atrocious music on that album, really. And it goes on forever as well. Cover being a self-portrait of Bob Dylan by Bob Dylan. You can see the likeness, can't you? Place near me sells a lot of Bob Dylan art. It's not great. Number 30, I'll stick to his music myself. Number 30 is the underrated Abraxas by Santana. It's a good album, that. Well worth a listen. So there we are. Right, let's move on to the riffs that I played for you. I started off playing Your Spirit in the Sky from Norman Greenbaum. I'm sure you got that, didn't you? Yeah, that kind of thing. Number 32 was and amazing in the same key. I play these all in the original key from the song. Yeah. Anyway, All Right Now. Free's greatest song, in most people's opinion. I don't think for people who really love Free, they think it's their greatest song, but apparently a bit of an off-the-cuff song as well. Something very wrote in 10 minutes after a very unsuccessful performance. I think it was Durham University, where it had been very tepid, the applause at the end, and off they went and decided they really needed a rocker to end their concerts, and that's where it came up with All Right Now with that wonderful riff to it. Tears of a Clown, surely you got that from Smoking the Miracles. It was actually, of course, written 3 years earlier and recorded 3 years earlier on an album that was released 3 years earlier, but it only came out as a single in 1970, and then the album was re-released and renamed Tears of a Clown to cash in on it. Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix, another re-release. Again, obviously, it was recorded a couple of years earlier, but after Jimmy's death, Voodoo Child, this was Voodoo Child actually, but they confused everyone in the way that writing it, because Voodoo Child, slight return, all that kind of, because there's a 10-minute version on, I think it's Are You Experienced, isn't it, Tom? Voodoo Child, released after his death, and his only ever #1, therefore. And then, of course, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, even though there's only 2 notes to get going for. I'm sure you recognised it. Paranoid. There we go. Again, another one that was just a bit of an album filler in the end, thrown on too, and then went so well they named the album after it. Okay, covers. Let's have a look at this. Something was Shirley Bassey's big version of it. Yeah, she certainly made it very Shirley. Leaving on a Jet Plane, of course, was Peter, Paul and Mary's very, very famous version of it, as well as being a hit this year. Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul and Mary had a slightly less promising year. He was convicted and sent to prison for taking immoral liberties with a 14-year-old girl. I gather the allegation is that the 14-year-old girl was apparently the head of the fan disturbing, who with her 17-year-old sister, who I think was there to accompany her, came up to the room that Peter Farrell was staying in to see him get an autograph, whatever. He answered the door naked, by all accounts, and then made sexual advances towards her. Nice. He was then given a presidential pardon by Jimmy Carter many years later. I know, what pardon him? He didn't claim he didn't do it. That's a very strange thing to do. See, it's not only our current or the current president who doesn't use presidential pardons very sensibly. All I have to do is dream. This is a bit of a lost version, but it's an interesting one. Bobby Gentry, her of the Tallahatchie Bridge, and Glenn Campbell along with her. Yeah, Ode to Billy Joe and all of that. Ode to Billy Joe mixed with the Rhinestone Cowboy, although he hadn't done the Rhinestone Cowboy by then, had he? It was Melanie who did Ruby Tuesday. Melanie, she's got a brand new key anyway, not a brand new combine harvester. That's later, isn't it? And Jimmy Cliff, I always find it very surprising. He was the one who had a big hit with Wild World, doing it as a cover, because of course Jimmy Cliff's generally known, isn't it, that his songs were covered by other people. But there you go, Wild World. So number 41, the connection between these four is not a happy connection. It is that they all died this year. Janis Joplin, of course, from an overdose. Same with Jimi Hendrix, who'd been falling apart towards the end there. Tammy Terrell, really, really sad. Not particularly. She was in her 20s, wasn't she? And she had I believe, a brain tumour killed her. Very, very tragic. Lovely voice. 42, the connection between Elvis, the Stones, The Who and Cream was that they all had, very successful as well, live albums released this year. Live Cream, live at Leeds for The Who, Get Your Ya-Ya's Out from Rolling Stones, and That's the Way It Is from Elvis. All worth a good listen, those ones there, really. 43, the connection between these four, well, the clue, if you didn't get it, was the Beatles, really, wasn't it? Especially giving you a shot from the Beatles' last ever photo shoot. It is because all of these all split up in 1970. Maybe I shouldn't have given you that picture of the Monkees, because of course Peter Tork had left left long before this. But Mike Nesmith left in 1970 to pursue his solo career, and I think the other two attempted to go on for a little bit longer. But it's not really the Monkees when it's two people, is it? And the Bonzo Dog Doo-Dah Band split up, even though they then reformed a number of times for one-offs, starting I think 2 years later after that. Okay, all the Beatles, of course, released debut solo albums this year. That's what we're going for. All of them. Ringo was the first off the mark with his atrocious Sentimental Journey. If you've listened to it, forgive me if you disagree with me that it's atrocious, but I suppose if you ever wanted to hear old standards sung by someone who really doesn't sing very well, then listen to it. Apparently he only made it for his mother. I'm sure she loved it. He also brought out his second album in the year as well, Bouquet of Blues. I don't know if I pronounced that the right way. McCartney got there pretty quickly after that with his self-titled album, which is it's a wonderful album. It was actually pilloried at the time. I think people expecting something along the lines of Abbey Road, and it was a homemade, lockdown thing. But we talked about that before. I think how people would love to be making that now. Lennon, of course, released Plastic Ono Band, which is a difficult listen, but it's a wonderful listen as well. All Things Must Pass, of course, George's triple album. Well, really, it's a double album. I mean, God knows what the third side's doing there. No one really listens to it, do they? But it's a wonderful collection of all the stuff he had built up. And of course, as we said, Ringo's Sentimental Journey. With the exception of Ringo, there's certainly an argument to be made that is all three of them released their best solo album first off. I personally prefer Living in the Material World to All Things Must Pass, but I'm in a minority there. But certainly I'd say McCartney is McCartney's best album, solo album, or even including Wings as well. I know people love Band on a Run. I do as well, but I think it's better. And Plastic Ono Band, I don't think he ever got near that again. I have to say, if you push me on this, apart from Ringo, of course, I'd say Lennon had the most disappointing solo career, to be honest. But there we are. Okay, the maths. 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus, the Spirit album. Good Spirit album too. Multiply it by Chicago 2. I know it was sometimes known as Chicago because it was Chicago Transit Authority, but considering they called the next one 3 and then 4 and 5 afterwards, we will refer to it as 2 there. I think that's fair enough. So that makes 24. Randy Newman, 12 songs. Many of you will know I love a bit of Randy Newman. So worth listening to that one. That makes 36. Led Zeppelin 3, of course, was the 1970 album. 2 was big in 70, but it released in 69, so that's 33. And the Dave Clark 5 makes 38. Did you get there? I hope so. Okay, let's push towards the end. Of course, as it was a famous airship designers family, it was Led Zeppelin who had to perform in Copenhagen as the Knobs. Like I said before, I mean, how petty. Really? How petty? Never mind. Someone calls himself Led Hoskin. I don't think I'd have a problem. Anyway, Who Married the Model Angela Barnett? I had to get him in there, don't I? Whenever I can, I get him in there. It's the man himself. Mr. Bowie got married to Angie on the 19th of March. Didn't have a release in the UK in 70 because The Man Who Sold the World was only released in America in 70. It wasn't until 71 that it was released in the UK. Then 48. This is a great story. This was Ray Davies of the Kinks. There's the album. Kinks, Lola versus Power Man and whatever else. It's a long, incomprehensible title. So he was in New York, and essentially they said to him, "You're not going to get any play on radio at all for your single Lola." And this is always the brilliant answer here. Not because it's about a transsexual, whichever you'd like to suggest now. I know the word transvestite is not. Neither of those words are constantly used now, but I'm talking in terms of 1970. But that you would have thought on its own would have been enough in 1970 to cause a problem, but it wasn't. No, the BBC didn't have a problem with that. No, it was the use of the word Coca-Cola. No one was going to play it because it was advertising Coca-Cola, so you had to make a 6,000-mile round trip to just put the words cherry cola in instead of Coca-Cola. Unbelievable. And that's a good enough story itself, but then that was on June the 3rd. On November the 20th, he had to do the same thing again for the single Ape Man. The line, "the air pollution is a fogging up my eyes," sounded too much like the air pollution is a effing up my eyes, apparently. And so I had to re-record it because people thought that's what it said. Tough year for the Kinks. Number 49. Right. So who had a #1 hit this year, then didn't release another single for 12 years? Now the clue is 12 years, and the clue and 70 and 82. You see, the reason they didn't have another #2 hit with their next release was they didn't have anything to celebrate for another 12 years. The #1 hit was Back Home. It's the England World Cup squad. Then in 1982, they released This Time, atrocious song, but fun. Anyway, that was the next time they reached the World Cup. Remember that they didn't shit in 74 or 78. Now they didn't even really have any other hits after that, because in 86 they were known as England World Cups 86. slightly different name in there. And when we got to 90 and the wonderful World in Motion, it was England New Order. And many ones after that, because after, of course, that things changed. 96, I don't think they were even credited on it. So I think it was just the Lightning Seeds and Baddiel and Skinner. So yeah, so technically 2 hits for the England World Cup squad, 12 years apart. There we go. Hope you're singing back home in your head now. It was Venus by Shocking Blue. Shocking Blue were Dutch, and Frank Avalon had a very famous hit with Venus in 1959. Bananarama, of course, never hit #1 in the UK. It was everywhere in there, but had a US #1, as did Shocking Blue. So both of them went to #1 in the US. That introductory riff, if you remember, the ding 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 ding, is taken directly from Pinball Wizard. And then I'll let you try and find that Oh Susanna connection, but it's apparently there. Don Pablo's Animals appalling version of the song, which was an instrumental, which just really used the riff over and over again. And yes, a typo. Rather than goddess on a mountaintop, it said godness on a mountaintop. And if you listen carefully to the Shocking Blue version, that is exactly what the singer sings, godness on the mountaintop. There you go. How did you do? I hope you did all right on that. This was the answers video. Sorry about that. Please do remember to donate, and please do let me know how you got them. Please do let me know how you got them. We're going to have another one next Sunday, another one for you. So thank you for stopping by. Please spread it around. Hope you did all right. Let me know how you did. I always love to know. Yeah, bye.